Learning Target 3. Students will be able to understand factors that contribute to unfair assessments and create assessments appropriate for special student populations. A fair assessment is one that provides all students an equal opportunity to demonstrate achievement. This is achieved with transparency about learning expectations, clear criteria for judging student performance, and the absence of bias. All students need a fair opportunity to show us what they have learned. Fair assessments are unbiased and non-discriminatory, uninfluenced by irrelevant or subjective factors. That is, neither the assessment task nor scoring is differentially affected by race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnic background, handicapped option, or other factors unrelated to what is being assessed. Fairness is also evident in what students are told about the assessment and whether they have had the opportunity to learn what is being assessed. A fair assessment is one in which it is clear what will and will not be tested. You need to be very clear and specific about the learning target, what it is to be assessed, and how it will be scored. Both the content and the assessment and the scoring criteria should be transparent. Being transparent means that students know the content and scoring criteria before the assessment is administered and often before instruction begins. When students know the learning targets and scoring criteria in advance, it is likely they'll be more intrinsically motivated and involved to obtain true mastery. Fair assessments are aligned with instruction that provides adequate time and opportunities for all students to learn. It's unfair to assess students on things that require prerequisite knowledge or skills that they do not possess. Teachers need to have a good understanding of the level of knowledge and skills students bring to an instructional unit. Avoid student stereotypes. Stereotypes are judgments about how groups of people will behave based on characteristics such as gender, race, socioeconomic status, physical appearance, and other characteristics. Bias is present if the assessment distorts performance because of the student's ethnicity, gender, race, religious background, or cultural background. Two major forms of assessment bias include offensiveness and unfair penalization. Offensiveness occurs if the content of the assessment offends, upsets, distresses, angers, or otherwise creates negative effect for particular students or a subgroup of students. This negative effect makes it less likely that the students will perform as well as they otherwise might, lowering the validity of the inferences. Unfair penalization is bias that disadvantages a student because of content that makes it more difficult for students from some groups to perform as compared to students from other groups because of gender, socioeconomic status, race, language, or other characteristics. Teachers don't deliberately produce biased assessments. It is most often unconscious and unintended. For these reasons, bias can be minimized by having others review your reassessments, looking specifically for the types of bias presented here, and of course, by your own sensitivity to bias when creating the assessment. Cultural differences that are reflected in vocabulary, prior experiences, skills, and values may influence the assessment. These differences will be minimized to the extent that you first understand them and then utilize multiple assessments that will allow all students to demonstrate their progress towards the learning target. Another type of assessment task bias that has received a lot of attention recently is the need to accommodate the special abilities of exceptional children. An assessment is biased if performance is affected by a disability or other limiting characteristic when the student actually possesses the knowledge or skill being measured. For English language learners, or ELL, Teachers should consult with appropriate specialists to ensure fair assessments. In Figure 3.12, a model of fairness in classroom assessment is illustrated. The model captures important aspects of fairness, organized by the sequence of steps teachers take in their instruction and assessment. At each step, there are factors teachers should consider, given the context and teacher understanding of fairness. Note the importance of confidentiality. Learning Target 4. Students will be able to understand what contributes to practical and efficient assessments and why this is an important consideration when determining how to measure student outcomes. High-quality assessments are practical and efficient. Teachers need to have a good understanding of the assessment methods they select. This includes knowledge of the strengths and limitations of the method, how to administer the assessment, how to score and properly interpret student responses, and the appropriateness of the method for giving learning targets. Also, it is desirable to use the shortest assessment possible that provides credible results. Another consideration in deciding about time for assessment is reliability precision. Time is a limited commodity. The information obtained needs to be worth the resources and time required to obtain it. Teachers need a good understanding of the strengths and limitations of the method, how to administer the assessment, how to score and properly interpret student responses, and the appropriateness of the method for given learning targets. Teachers who use new or unfamiliar assessment methods risk time and resources for questionable results. It's best to use the shortest assessment possible that provides credible results. Considerations include the time that is needed to construct the assessment, for students to provide answers, and to score the results. The time needed for this process is different for each method of assessment. For all types of assessments, reuse questions and tasks whenever possible. Multiple choice tests can take a long time to prepare, but a shorter time for students to complete and teachers to score. Essay tests take less time to prepare, but take a long time to score. Performance assessments are probably most time intensive. Practical and efficient assessments are easy to administer, and some methods of assessment are much easier to score than other methods. In general, teachers should use the easiest method of scoring appropriate to the method and purpose of the assessment. Objective tests are easiest to score and contribute less scoring error. Scoring performance assessments, essays, or papers takes more time to ensure reliability. Using rating scales and checklists can reduce time and increase reliability. The method of assessment selected also influences the ease of interpretation. A single score from an objective test is easy to interpret. Individualized written comments can be difficult to interpret. Scores on a rubric can enhance ease of interpretation for performance assessments. Sufficient information needs to be provided so interpretation is accurate. Often grades or scores are applied too quickly without enough thought and detailed feedback to students. Finally, cost is typically unimportant for classroom assessments. Some performance assessments are exceptions because of the cost of materials. Teachers should use the most economical assessment, all other things being equal. However, less expensive tests may eventually cost more in further assessment. Recall the case study from the beginning of this chapter and presentation. Which assessment did you think Kiona should use? Kiona has clear, appropriate learning targets that center on knowledge and simple understanding of cellular parts, so either assessment aligns with her learning targets. While the performance task of a product seems more involved, the content is simple. There is no reasoning or critical thinking involved with the product. Additionally, both assessments are aligned with her state standards on knowledge of cellular parts and functions. Both assessments provide positive student consequences in regards to learning and motivation. For both, students will be inclined to review material so as to ensure a successful demonstration of student learning and thus a positive grade. The difference in student learning is that one allows for student reference throughout the assessment process, the other requires students recall without reference. Thus, the criteria for which the assessments differ are in fairness, validity, and reliability. For the product or the performance task, parental influence may influence fairness and validity. Is it the student or the parent's knowledge? The reliability of student learning decreases since students have access to reference materials. For the quiz, these issues are eliminated. With respect to practicality and efficiency, the quiz will be faster to score and allow Kiona to provide quicker remediation. And with that, we have wrapped up Chapter 3, High Quality Assessment.